Good evening, all those concerned citizens who continue to look forward to listening to the United National Congress under our astute leadership of Mrs. Kamla Prasad Bisesa, Senior Counsel. It is my pleasure always to join you on this Monday night forum, this platform. But as you would have heard the previous speaker, my good colleague, Senator Damian Lyder, it is not in the best of circumstances that we meet and we are discussing issues this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, let me pay tribute to our political leader and to all of my colleagues in the Parliament, in the party, the National Executive, to all of you concerned citizens, again, good night, and I say to the constituents of Chaguanas West particularly, good night to all of you. What you would have heard from Senator Damian Lyder, it was not any simple revelation. And we all know that he's a successful business entrepreneur. But Senator Lyder has shown that he's fiery. He's a highly decorated senator. And therefore he's very passionate. You would have heard that in his speech. You would have heard that in the facts, the revelations that he put out this evening. He's a very passionate citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. And all of us, the time has come. We have to show and we have to display this passion and we have to channel it in a way that we can unseat this present PNM government, this present PNM Dr. Keith Rowley-led regime. Now, I would like to talk a little bit about some of the issues that have engaged the public in the last week leading up to today's date. And I want to say that I have gone on record for calling out the Attorney General for his manipulation or his continuing manipulation of the facts. He is a fact spinner, to put it nicely. He cherry picks his information and he feeds it to you, and you don't know what the hell you're eating. You see, the Prime Minister himself has told us that the police can come into your home. We heard this last week, Thursday. You can come into your home and tell you what to do under the guise of infection control. But this is not the first time that they are trying to do this. You remember the Property Tax Act? You remember they wanted to send people inside your home to assess how many bathrooms you have in your house? This is becoming a nasty habit of this administration. Never in the history of this country has any Prime Minister ever dared to cross that line and enter your sacred and private space without any regard to your constitutionally protected rights. But if there was any doubt, rest assured, the Opposition United National Congress will not let this pass. We will be watching how these developments unfold, and we will move in good time to make sure you and your constitutional rights are protected. The Prime Minister is on record that he has been well advised by people he considers legal experts that the police can come into your homes to monitor your compliance with COVID protocols. Well, we have seen that the Prime Minister has been supported since he made that statement by Minister Fitzgerald Hines, Attorney General Al-Rawi, Mr. Keith Scotland, and some others. So we know he has access to lawyers in quantity. But now we are beginning to wonder if he has access to lawyers of quality. The AG himself has come to defend the Prime Minister's position, very much like the wolf trying to blow down the house of the third little pig. Try as he might, it not going to work. But the way this man defending that, it leaves us to wonder whether it was he, Attorney General, or his wife's law firm that provided the advice. Now, I want to tell you, when he issued his release on the 30th of April, the regulations which he pointed to under the ordinance, the public health ordinance, as giving powers to intervene in the event of a wake. You know, when someone died, they have a wake. The ordinance giving powers to intervene in the event of a wake, when he referred to that, the regulations which he quoted did not even match up with the circumstances involving the holding of a wake. So the AG's release, public release, simply did not make any sense. You don't have to be a lawyer to figure that one out. Listen, we have no problems with curtailing the numbers in a wake. But the provision of the public health ordinance, which the Attorney General referred to, involves the holding of a wake. He didn't tell you this part. It involves the holding of a wake, literally over a dead body which has been infected. You see, the public health ordinance is of great vintage. In the old days, that used to happen. The corpse was kept in the home, and a wake was held over the corpse. So you didn't want, when you had an infectious disease, the public health ordinance contemplated that you could not hold a wake literally over the corpse. It is either that the AG, the Attorney General, does not understand these distinctions in the legislative provisions, or he was hell-bent last week on working backwards to defend the Prime Minister's indefensible position. Either way, he is spinning facts, which is a worrying matter, as he is the person charged and duty-bound as the Attorney General to look after the welfare of the citizenry. Ladies and gentlemen, I promised myself that tonight I was not going to get into any hair-splitting legal analysis about how wrong that piece of advice is. Let me simply point your attention to the Law Association of Trinidad and Tobago, which has said that the Prime Minister's views about police entering your homes is simply wrong. The Law Association is of the view that for the government to use the public health ordinance to permit entry to private property will be illegal. And this is what they had to say. It opens the door too easily to an abuse of power and breaches of constitutional rights. The militarized face of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, which is the one which regrettably we have come to know over the past few years, is not one to be shown to children in their homes and safe spaces, and citizens who have been traumatized at multiple levels by this pandemic. This from the Law Association of Trinidad and Tobago. Listen, Attorney General, if you are going to introduce measures under law which allow persons such as police officers to enter people's homes, it must be in the clearest circumstances, and it must be done in accordance with the rule of law. If that is not done, the United National Congress will definitely be taking you to task in the Parliament and outside of the Parliament, in the courtroom and outside of the courtroom. Now, we know that critical thinking has never been a strong point of this administration. But to come before you and lie to you, the citizens, and make you feel shaky that police can come into your homes is downright sinister, and it is calculated to make this population feel afraid. This is how they have been ruling this country since the advent of the pandemic, by injecting fear into the population. So because of fear, citizens are feeling lost. Between the incompetence and the lies, citizens don't know what to think. This is the modus operandi of the government. This is the legacy of this administration. It is to keep people confused and afraid. Now, some citizens don't believe that the vaccines are safe, thanks to this government's lack of initiative to encourage them, to show them the facts, and therefore they can make an informed decision about vaccines. But you see, that could work in their favor as the government, since the government has failed to make alternative measures and to take steps to secure sufficient vaccines. We have heard this time and again from Dr. Sicharan, from Dr. Bodo, from Dr. Ragbir. Since last year to now, what have they done except to stay slavishly true to the World Health Organization, which they say provides a certain legal indemnity against persons challenging the outcomes of a vaccine not approved by the World Health Organization? That is how they think. They go to great lengths to make sure that they, as the government, are protected, rather than make sure your life is safe. You know, in the United States, the Food and Drug Administration approved both the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines before the World Health Organization did. This is a fact Dr. Sicharan was telling me just earlier before tonight's forum. Even in Europe, they were approving vaccines before the World Health Organization. So other countries were taking the lead. Why did we take so long? Was this not indemnity enough when we saw these countries taking these steps? For the government, for this government to take steps to acquire vaccine outside of the World Health Organization parameters, that was something that they should have considered. Right in our backyard, we have Cuba, who we could turn to for all kinds of assistance time and again, especially in the medical industry. So how hard was it to think of asking to join them in some kind of clinical vaccine trials? Then let us, the population, choose whether to take it or not. And as it stands, even up to today, right now, we need more vaccines than ever. You can imagine the Minister of Health boasting about 40,000 plus vaccines when we're talking about 1.3, 1.4 million citizens. You know why? Because now we have over 120,000 illegal immigrants, which we just heard from Senator Leiter, entering this country illegally under this government while they were watching the planes landing in Piaco, probably watching Delcy and others come in. This government doesn't look at the backyard, not Cuba, not Cedrus. They only keeping Hawkeyes in the wrong places inside your house. Imagine a simple decision to share out second doses as first doses to first-timers, those who are getting the vaccine now for the first time. This seems like a genius attempt on their part and rocket science coming from this government, which is not used to thinking outside the box. Or maybe I should say, I should apologize, sorry, it is a government that is not used to thinking at all. The Prime Minister himself says he's doing all he can to protect the borders. But how is it possible that only 62%, according to them, of national security assets are working? We heard MP Saddam Hussein yesterday speak to this point. In which serious country in the world will the Prime Minister blame the administration of 11 years ago and ignore the fact that they are in charge for a second term and not fix one damn thing? Why grab the throat of the willing? You're terrorizing citizens who want to come home to their children instead of trying to fix your own abject failure called national security. Instead of beefing up manpower, these borders, you go to that psychological feel-good space in which you constantly sing the lullaby of blame the UNC, blame Kamla, and blame the population. The government should instead account for what it did in the last term in office and continuing into this one. Or better yet, save it. Everyone knows the answer. It has not done one good thing. Brothers and sisters, all that is happening now, this is a wake-up call for this country to start thinking straight. So while this government remains hyper-engaged with and against those citizens who land and are willing to show negative PCR tests and quarantine at their expense, their own expense, the illegal immigrants are arriving without conditions with the compliments of this intellectually challenged government. This PNM Rowley-led government is facilitating the overload of illegal immigrants. I have to say, facilitating, because they have turned a blind eye to the growing problem. Now we run the risk of overloading as a nation. And that will have implications for us in terms of the ability to feed ourselves as a nation, to provide medical care and jobs to people. What education is the next generation of Venezuelans here going to grow up on? Porous borders, we have heard, which allow an endless and unchecked stream of illegal immigrants, is like trying to fit all the people from the Titanic into a little life raft, a lifeboat. That is the genius efforts of this PNM government. This is the one time I will have to agree with Gypsy when he warned us that the ship is sinking and the seas are rough, all thanks to the weakness and incompetence of this administration. Imagine you have one incompetent Minister of National Security removed and replaced by another equally incompetent minister. The new Minister Hines continued to make the same old excuses as to why they are unable to secure our borders and our people. But the failures don't stop at the border. And this is where I would want to just go into a little bit, we are facing levels of incompetence in the education sector like never before. Imagine in this pandemic, you see they want to go in onto our homes. You should really go into our homes and see what is going on with children and parents. In some primary schools that they still have no sanitizing stations, no thermometers, some have no sinks, nothing. So you will say, yes, we are in a pandemic, nobody is using these schools, but that is not true. It is still the place where teachers go and principals go and they prepare their classes sometimes. And for vulnerable students in the system, no assistance is being given to those in the school feeding program after that crashed hamper distribution that the government had at the outset of the pandemic. The education minister handled the CXC fiasco with kids' gloves. She was afraid to call out CXC for its mishandling of children's results. Today, everybody hoping that CXC gets its act straight this year, because we just cannot depend on the Minister of Education to fend for our children and demand better from CXC. We have no clue what has happened to the $50 million allocated to obtain devices. The more questions we ask, it is the more unanswered responses that we get. It is totally uninformed. But we say thank God for corporate TNT, who is propping up the education sector with their charitable donations. Mind you, it seems that that was the intention of the government from the start. That's how this government runs its education ministry. And for those who got devices, I ask, what good are they without connectivity? This government has never seen the whole picture, and this is their leadership style: health, education. We will not stop speaking about these things, because under Mrs. Kamla Persad-Bissessar, laptops were received by children as of right. Now, many schools have been asked to make their own laptops by the Ministry of Education. They have been asked for that the laptops which were provided by the ministry in 2018, that it now be available in 2021 to primary school teachers. And as exams are imminent, many schools need these laptops for their technical drawing, IT, computer science, digital media students, etc. The Ministry of Education has been made aware of this issue, but not surprisingly, no solution in sight. Funding for denominational schools is way overdue. No health and safety officers for primary schools were provided, even though we are in the midst of a pandemic. The ministry constantly demands data on short notice via WhatsApp, leaving principals repeatedly scrambling to provide information on short notice. We are not even talking tonight about broken infrastructure and lack of furniture and vacancies not being filled and people waiting to be interviewed. We don't have the time tonight. When the day comes, teachers don't know if they come in or they go in. Parents don't know if they come in or they go in. I want to ask this question of the minister. Why do parents of students who are scholarship winners have to provide copies of their bank statements if scholarships were given on merit, regardless of what money they have? So education is another sector that is in a thorough mess, along with national security and health. But as one minister said confidently, we are in charge now. We are in charge now. Deal with it. This is what their being in charge looks like. Rest assured, though, that the opposition will deal with every bit of it. So I want to say in conclusion that we must join hands. We have a very powerful team under the astute leadership of Mrs. Kamla Persad-Bissessar. And now is the time to unite with her. She has shown consistently that she is prepared to take the fight to the PNM in the best interest of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you very much.